And welcome everyone. Thank you all for being here. Welcome to the March edition of the CUNY BMI Dialogues. This month it is dedicated to the dads. We are calling it the Real Dads Network. Thank you all for being Pardon me on that. Let me mute that. This month, like I was saying, we're calling it, we're dedicating it to the dads, Real Dads Network, strengthening and uplifting our fathers and their relationships. And we have an amazing panel of men who will lead us through a conversation. And just before we came online, we were talking about the kind of like the shadow work or the things that most people don't tell you about being a dad, right? And so, like I said, today's conversation is going to be about dads. Before we get into it, I want to just kind of give everybody two pieces of information. You might notice that the flyer said Dr. Sean Best would be the moderator. He had to attend to a personal issue, so he can't make it today. But let me just remind everybody, as we normally do, that the CUNY BMI exists to improve retention and graduation efforts for students at CUNY, particularly Black and Latino men. And we have a plethora, over 30 projects throughout the system that expand from reentry to GED, HSC education. We have community college projects. We have four-year colleges. And of course, we have law school and medical school projects that work all together through our 6 pillars of social emotional programming, peer-to-peer mentoring, academic enhancement, and some other pillars that are more the background of what we do to sustain these projects. And so this is what we've been doing through grants that have been generously funded by the city council. 15 years running, we're going into our 16th. Now, let me get into it. I will introduce first Mr. Gene Adams, who is the Director of Collaborative Education Programs at Bronx Community College. Mr. Adams has over 40 years of corporate, nonprofit, and education leadership experience. Mr. Adams' basic philosophy embraces his belief that children are our only real gift to the universe, which I love, and they must be respected and cultivated. At the present, Mr. Adams is the director, like I said, of the collaborative education programs at Bronx Community College. He specializes in developing and strengthening local and global educational partnerships with schools, community partners, and the industry as a whole, using documented experience as professional therapist, artist, historian, entrepreneur, and he defines himself as a possibility broker. Recognized nationally and internationally as an educational innovator, Mr. Adams has participated in numerous science and technology education grant development projects, including $9 million for CUNY 2020, $1.4 million New York Education Science and Technology Entry Program, National Science Foundation, Federal Gear Up, Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and the list goes on and on and on. Secondly, and we have one of our very own, Mr. Raheem Brooks, who is the director of the CUNY Fatherhood Academy at LaGuardia. For the past 15 years, Mr. Brooks is a MSW, has helped and designed, implemented educational, vocational skills training, and support programs that are designed to empower the families through the strength-based practice. Raheem came to LaGuardia Community College in 2012 to assume the role as the program coordinator, as I mentioned, of the CUNY Fatherhood Academy. Program's overarching mission is to strengthen families by promoting responsible parenting and economic stability through education, employment, and personal development. Currently serves as a director. Prior to joining the Fatherhood Academy, Raheem was a program coordinator at Strive East Harlem Employment Services, where he oversaw agency supported services department, as well as established the lead fatherhood initiatives serving fathers and families across New York City. And our moderator for today is the founder, CEO of Real Dads Network, Mr. Derek Phillips. He is The Real Dads Network is an organization that is committed to strengthening the institution of the family by promoting positive aspects of fathers in all media and providing fathers with resources designed to empower them. Derek is one of the pioneers of the fatherhood movement. He has appeared in various media outlets like Reverend Al Sharpton's Hour of Power, Huffington Post Live, Kiss FM, Open Line, BET, and various other cable internet shows. So I am going to step back and let Mr. Derek Phillips run this conversation today. Stay tuned and make sure you put your questions on chat if you're on YouTube Live. But Mr. Phillips, thank you so much, and please take over.
Jorge, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for getting us organized around setting up this panel. This panel is very, for me, I'm excited that we're having this discussion about fatherhood, because far too many times when we are talking about our families and we're talking about what we need to do to build our communities, far too many times we leave out fathers. So even when we talk about like public programs, so if you look at a public program like WIC, WIC is a program to help families in need, but WIC stands for Women and Infants and Children. So fathers are not even included. So when we start talking about building our communities, we have in essence forgotten about the importance that fathers play, the important roles that fathers play. When you look at all the research is clear. Children do better when both parents are actively involved in their education and in their lives. So I'm excited again that we're talking about fathers, but as we're dealing with fathers and what's going on right now, we're also talking about a pandemic that we're dealing with. So what has happened in regards to this pandemic is that a lot of people we're going through a lot of challenges and we're having to overcome a lot of obstacles. So fathers are also dealing with these obstacles. So with our panel, with Eugene and Raheem, we're going to talk about some of those challenges. So in your work in regards to fatherhood and community, what are some of those challenges that you're seeing that our fathers are facing during this pandemic? So we'll go to Raheem.
Sure. I mean, it's the anniversary of, when we all went remotely, and we were asked to really be a part of what was going on right now. I want to first shout out, my team who were able to jump on remotely and continuing our effort to help strengthen fathers and families, because it happened really all of a sudden, and it was incredible, traumatic, for our country, and especially, for our communities of color. Um, a lot of our guys were going through things, before. I had a great conversation yesterday with a brother, and he had made a great point. He said, there was this pandemic that was going on, and several other pandemics, but the pandemic of racism, was huge even before, the current pandemic. And then you add this onto it, it creates additional challenges for many of our communities. Um, a lot of our guys, were going through it during this time, and still are. Fortunately, we lost some of our students, whether it's through accidents, violence, suicide. These are things that occurred during this time. And as fathers, and I speak for myself. My daughter is in kindergarten, so you add that element of assisting your children to become remote learners, is an additional layer of challenge. Um, and to be in the same household at times with people all day and isolated with a group of people, that's another challenge that has been heavy. But I really love how we responded to it. We we're in a position I'm blessed, and we're blessed to be in a position to continue to support, our communities and our families. And, I'm sure we'll get to that, conversation of how we, provide support. But it's challenges, and the guys need a place, a safe space to, connect and to continue to grow, even, this pandemic is, created incredible damage that we'll be feeling, I'm sure, for years to come. But that makes our role even that more important. Yeah.
So, Raheem, about how many fathers were the Community Father Program? How many were you serving? And also describe what your program was like before the pandemic, and then what it became like during the pandemic.
Got it. Yeah. Well, before the pandemic, again, our program works with fathers between the ages of 18 to 30. And we have a 2-track format. It's a pre-college program, and the idea is to get students their high school equivalency diploma, which is one of our tracks for students, who did not graduate high school. And then another track is to get students college ready, which are college and career prep track, with students that come in with a high school diploma. The powerful thing that happens with us when we're on campus is that, guys are being exposed to an environment that many of them didn't realize was for them, a college campus. Our program is located at LaGuardia Community College, which is the program that I'm the director for. And I'll get to later, we have also 2 other campuses at Hostos Community College, as well as Kingsborough Community College. But the big piece was to have, young men fathers come on to a college campus. And you mentioned this earlier, Derek, that, there aren't a lot of things systematically designed for fathers specifically. It's always, it's never tailored directly, to fathers. But our program, is, and for it to be on a college campus was huge. Guys are seeing themselves as college students, and not quite there yet, but they're seeing that they're not too far away either, So to really have fellowship and, powerful conversations, in addition to your math classes and your reading and science, but guys, we're having, powerful conversations in college classrooms. And these are classrooms, again, that the brothers didn't necessarily see themselves in before that. It allows for them to experience that. And we're missing that a bit in this Zoom world that we're living in now. I think we're doing a really good job, but I think, that there is something missing when you're having that type of fellowship conversation, that powerful, circle of, support circle that we often have. It is missing a bit. I think that was a powerful piece, although I believe we transitioned well to this environment. I think that it's something there that you can't replace, just being in the same room, the energy you're feeling off each other is very difficult to replace. So that has been a challenge.
So, Gene, can you also just, talk as well in regards to some of the challenges that you've observed and that you've noticed, but also give us some of that, what was happening before and how the changes in terms of the pandemic really affected the program that you were doing as well, and as it relates to fathers in the community?
Yeah, I think Raheem did a very excellent job. And again, we have to just start the discussion with the reality that we were in a crisis before the pandemic. So the challenges that were confronting fathers, families, and children were there already. And now on every level, those challenges have been compounded by the so-called pandemic. And with regards to, the overall kind of picture, it's kind of difficult because, as you mentioned with WIC, the problem with WIC is that thinking that has isolated and minimized and marginalized the roles of males really goes back to the New Deal, goes back to Franklin Roosevelt and their effort to do something during that particular crisis of the 30s. They began to put in place these types of punitive policies that kind of evolve us to kind of like where we are now. And so prior to the pandemic, my office was on campus, was always open. Mr. Clifford Marshall is the director of the BCC men's program, Male Empowerment Network. And I've always been a partner and a member of the group. And one of the things that we've done very well was hand off, young men who would partner with specific individuals on campus. And I think not having that sense of security, where I know, once, twice a week, so-and-so is going to pop in my office and just sit for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and we'll have a conversation and we'll build on a concept or an idea or a challenge, and we'll learn from each other, but he will definitely walk away with some of the advice that he believed that he needed when he came into my office. The Zoom environment has its strengths, but the reality is that the isolation engaged, which is a part of it, it doesn't take much for Black men to pull back, to go into a sense of kind of pause mode. But one of the things that having the campus environment was, I will stop you in the quad. I will stop you in the cafeteria. I will stop you in the parking lot. I will see you walking up from the subway. And we will always have these engagements. And I think one of the key elements that we had was that they could learn from each other. And I think that's a critical part of everything that we do, is that young people begin to feed and to nourish one another through the challenges that we collectively experience. So as it stands right now, sure, I think our programs are holding the line, but we all still know that recruitment is down, and some of our men specifically, who are parents and who are already in these challenges with various systems, whether it's the criminal justice system, the court system, are already feeling like they're behind the 8 ball. So I think we need to kind of begin to have, I guess, more creative, innovative types of outreach initiatives, programs, projects. Fundamentally, what do we want? We want our young men to be resilient. We want them to be able to spot and to take advantage of opportunities. Of course, the question of responsibility and modeling. This environment has hurt a lot of people, and I've done a number of workshops in recent weeks on the impact of COVID on young people, specifically on children and families. I'm doing a workshop this weekend on domestic violence. So that the cycle of dysfunction that a lot of our young men were navigating through and stumbling through has only been expanded, while the relief and the services have not been equally administered.
We're looking at, there have been so many challenges, when we talk about the Black community and when we talk about the Black and Brown communities in general, but this is here. And so what are some of the things that we can do to overcome some of those challenges? Because sometimes with challenges, there are opportunities. So what are some of the things that we can do with our men in regards to, because I know a lot of them don't have social media. A lot of them don't use, may not have access to computers. They may not even have access to the internet. So how do we still get that message across to them that to empower them to still move forward despite all the obstacles, despite all the challenges? And how do we give them that, provide them with those tools during this challenging time? So Raheem.
Yeah, sure. I just want to say that's a great point, Gene. there's something incredible about those hallway meetings that is just like they're profound. Like just out of nowhere. It's not scheduled. Like we're in an environment now where things have to be a bit scheduled. Our conversations that we're having with guys, and we had some of that, of course, on campus, but those bump-ins, those lunchtime conversations are incredible, and it's really difficult to replace those. Saying that, we work with 18 to 30-year-old young men, and there are definitely challenges. I think, I didn't know what Zoom was. I'm not even gonna lie. Like I'm not, I'm like, I had no clue. But I think we had to catch up to like technology and to figure out how to communicate with them using these different things, including social media. Our guys are always on some type of social media, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or not even Facebook anymore. I guess Instagram. We didn't embrace TikTok yet, so maybe that's something we need to look into. But there are places to, you have to meet them where they are, and look for them there, and not in a way where it's going to come off like we're trying to do an investigation, but just, check in. We've changed, I guess, our approach to kind of how we're like checking in. It's just right now. I mean, when the pandemic jumped off, and even to now, it's just, are you okay? Are you good? Goes a long way. And I think, again, like I keep going back to bumping in the hallway. Those check-ins just in the hallway are just powerful. I mean, they did amazing for me when I was in college. Like, hey, you okay? And that's missing. But I think, again, saying that, Derek, I think we have to, figure out where are our guys. Let's go there. What's up? And check them out and meet them where they are, wherever that may be. I think we have to, develop different strategies on how to do that and embrace some of this technology that can be a bit off-putting sometimes if you're not used to it. But I think it's very important now and moving forward, for the future.
Yeah, I look at it very similar. It's funny. I got involved in the Black Fathers movement primarily because I got initially involved with the rites of passage movements. Remember those in the 1980s? And we began these projects because boys needed men and that kind of a thing. And they were great. But one of the things I noticed back then was that, people were telling me, yeah, brother, we got to do something here. We got to make these boys men. We got to do something to make these boys men. And what I began to realize was boys didn't need manhood. They needed boyhood. And a major component of boyhood is fathers, whether it's your natural father, your stepfather, your surrogate father. They are very important to the process of boyhood or girlhood, of course. But specifically, when I was doing rites of passage, I realized that we needed men. And as we looked deeper into it, we realized also that some of the men who were already fathers didn't get all the memos in terms of how to implement themselves as fathers and how to be, actively engaged with their children. And so one of the things that I think is important, even in the so-called COVID world, is to support that process of active fatherhood in terms of what do you do with your child or your children. And because I think the key to empowerment oftentimes is, one of the keys, I think, is being engaged. I give an example. I have a buddy who's a great dad. He's from another country. He's a wonderful brother, but he didn't know how to engage his boys. He was barking, telling them what to do this, do that. But he loves his kids, of course. So I would go over on Sundays for dinner, and I still do. And I would take games, and we would all sit on the floor. And I really, as the elder brother, had to teach him how to play games, how to play Uno, Connect Four, how to play Monopoly. And because initially when we first started playing, he played with his son to win. I'm like, oh, we don't really care about winning. We care about him feeling comfortable and confident in his communication with you. So I think even within this type of an environment where we need, and I love Derek's word, because it's my mantra, tools. Because a lot of projects and a lot of programs give people enthusiasm, we give them motivation, we give them, all this rah-rah stuff like going to good old Sunday meeting, and they get out there and they all pumped up when they leave the service or they leave the program, but when they go home, they don't have the tools to consistently support the skills that we need. So one of the key elements I think for me is in regards to tools is, we as folks who are working with our young men need to be clear and specific in terms of the types of tools that we're offering and how we can help them learn not only how to master the tool, but also how to turnkey it so that they can share it in the group and they can talk, with the other brothers and other friends, because they're not the only one, So I think for me, a critical component is one, engagement, and two, coming up with simple things that we can do to build on the process. Because a lot of our dads, have, of course, they have different levels of parenthood. But I think that one thing we need to show them through our own experience and our own testimony is that parenthood is an evolutionary thing. I'm still learning how to be a parent with my 30-year-old daughter, because she's not the same daughter she was when she was 15, which ain't the same daughter she was when she was 7. So I've had to totally continue to evolve myself. But I think it's those tools that you spoke of that I think are at this beginning to identify clear-cut tools that we can give them or that we can help them develop. And then, of course, turnkey.
Now, both of you spoke about the importance of that being on the campus and being able to, dialogue with each other. And so that was really that support group that a lot of the men and dads had when they were at school. So we understand the importance of that support group. So how do we create that support group? What might it look like in regards to for fathers and young men now? How do we create that, virtual support group? So we can still provide them with those tools and still give them that arena where they can have those safe conversations and feel as though they're being productive where they're moving forward. So how do we create that on the Zoom? And I know these Zooms and virtual is difficult, but how do we create that?
Yeah, it is challenging, and we have we are, in addition, again, as I mentioned before, in addition to the educational component, we have a parenting and life skills component where again we connect with each other, and I think for us and what we're learning is that let's say we have 20 students in a class, I think it would make more sense to maybe have breakout sessions where the group is a bit smaller. You can kind of go off and have individual smaller group conversations and perhaps bring that back to a larger group. I think that's been effective. You have to have like follow-up. Again, our counselors are a big part of the parenting workshop. So they are part of these workshops, and then they can have additional ongoing conversations outside of those, follow up. Hey, I noticed you mentioned that in class, what you want to speak more about that. We have an additional layer of being a part of the Black Male Initiative. We have a mentoring component, which are former students and guys that are currently in college, and they do check-ins. They're also a part of the parenting group. They're a little closer in age to the actual students that are participating, and they have follow-up. Hey, I noticed you having some things going. You mentioned something about child support. I dealt with that also. Let's build on that. I think it happens anyway on campus, that same thing, but I think there's a little bit more that needs to happen. Again, we're looking at each other in these boxes, and in a way, it kind of separates us. We're in these squares, like we can't reach out and touch. So we, reach out and touch in different ways. And again, I think we just have to pay attention to like what's going on in the groups. Something points that are raised. Think about the other day, something came up, and I know that it had to be something that a counselor followed up on. Like, yo, I noticed you mentioned that. What's going on? And then it's interesting sometimes because sometimes guys don't always open up in in-person groups, and like and they may not open up even more in these type of groups. But any little thing, you have to really, it's a team effort to kind of pay attention to what's going on, and then not so much address it, but hey, I noticed you mentioned that. It has to be a follow up with a lot of the conversation, a lot of the building that's going on in these groups. I notice even more these days.
You know, Raheem, you brought up something as one a strategy that I think is really an important strategy, which is a lot of times when we do the Zooms, we're all on the Zoom. So you got like 25 people in the Zoom room, 25, 30 people in the Zoom room. But I think what you brought up was very important, which is utilizing the breakout groups, the breakout sessions. So because what
we noticed that.
Yeah,
we noticed
because
that early on.
They don't talk when you put them in the big group. But when you start to break it up into the smaller groups, so now you have maybe 4 or 5 smaller groups, then you tend to get more dialogue. So I think that's definitely a great strategy to use.
Yeah, even the guys because some guys don't have the cameras on, and we would like the cameras to be on, but that there's sometimes some things going on in their house they don't want, so we're cool with it, but even when the group is a little small, even those guys come up a little more, like they want to share a little bit more. So we noticed early on, I mean, the group is like 15, 20 guys, and then some gentlemen aren't really communicating and they have the cameras off. You're like, are they there? And it's just a lot of it is follow up and really again, meeting the guys where they are. I think I love the smaller groups because you're able to really have a little bit more intimate conversations and bring it back to the bigger group. I think it's effective.
So Gene, you want to add to that in regards to some of the other strategies and tools?
I mean, I love what Raheem said. I'm a big supporter of micro sessions. Every session doesn't have to be a big session. It don't have to be for everybody. And I think we sometimes we need to shift on what I call like a creative process. One of the things that, or a couple of things that we can do, we can have contests sometimes, where we actually give a project out, and could be anything from write a song, write a rap, or some type of artistic thing that brothers want to do. That we set parameters and rules around it, of course, so that all the presentations fit within an expectation. But I think to address concerns and issues using different modalities could be fun. It could be fun. It could be innovative. I have a lot of youth programs, and one of the projects that we use is something called it's an online music production software. We pay like $250 for the year. And we get on there with young people, soundtrack, and they actually produce their own songs, they produce their own beats, they produce their own things. What I'm saying is I think sometimes we have to shift it and change it around and find a way of talking without necessarily having to talk about the critical thing first, or maybe use these other methods to move to that critical point. Or debates. Brothers love to argue about everything, and we can create debates, and we set up the rules and we give them kind of like the tools. Winning, that's of course never relevant. What's relevant is communication and learning how to listen, learning how to make your point. It's an active process as opposed to folks just kind of chiming in about kind of what's right or what's wrong or what's going on in their lives. I think another thing that I would like to see is we can pick groups of them to actually produce a presentation. where they actually come forward and say, okay, we got you three guys, you guys are going to tackle this. And we're going to, of course, we're going to provide you with support. We're going to meet offline, but with 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we're going to help you get to the point where you can make this presentation. So for me, I'm a tremendous supporter of micro activities that are sometimes smaller and sometimes may require more time on task off camera, in terms of with the group. But I think that bringing art innovation, because a lot of our guys, they come up out of, whether it was hip hop or whether they draw or whether they do other kinds of things. What else are you interested in that could complement you as a dad? Because sometimes they have skills that nobody know about. One of the things, I have another project where we work with comic books. And with that project, every year we have a convention and we open it up. It's free in the Bronx. And we get, of course, it's not the Comic Con downtown, but it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be an environment where parents, dads, moms bring their children and they come out to the comic book thing. And we know that a lot of the dads are baseline Marvel freaks. So they coming for themselves as well as they coming for their kids. But it's cool. So the kids take a workshop, the dad take the workshop. So we use art in different formats to kind of bring people out. We know that a lot of our boys, let's say when they're 9 or 10, they become aware of themselves as artists. So we draw what we know. We draw superheroes. We don't draw trees. We don't draw flowers in the pot. We draw Batman. That's what we do. Why? Because my boys like Batman, and the girls, and when they see it, oh, Rakeem, you can draw so good. I like that feeling. But what happens is, mom and them, they know you can draw too. But what they say is, baby, go in the room, get that book with all your pictures and bring it out so your Aunt Shirley can see what you can do. So he come out with his book. Oh, they love it. But what happens is, at 12 or 13, nobody cares anymore. So the kids stop caring. So he's like, I'm gonna do something else. But then if you go to Rikers and you see all the artwork that these young men are doing, because they have the time now to get back in contact with that part of themselves. So what I'm saying is some of our activities, some of our engagements need to talk to the young men without having the conversation specifically up front about why you're here. Because you got your art, you can draw something, because we can build a virtual exhibit. You got your poetry, you got your spoken word, you got your hip hop. We can bring some of that into it.
Gene, I think that's so important. And I recently retired as a New York City educator. And one of the things that I knew from teaching was that you have to find, as you're saying, find that hook. You got to find that hook to bring people in. And once you find stuff that's relevant, and this is also one of the things that we're constantly talking about when it comes to our children, is that a lot of times the curriculum is not relevant to who they are or to their experiences. So therefore, if you don't make it relevant to me, it's tough for me to be motivated to want to learn. So one of the things that I did is that with a lot of my students, they had issues with math, and I was a history teacher. And I said I had to teach math, but I hated math with a passion. So I'm like, okay, I need the job, I'll teach math. But I started going home and I started taking the rules for math and putting it into rap. And when I would go to class, that's how I would teach it. So a lot of my students started picking it up that way. And then I had a student that graduated and came back like years later and said, I still remember your stupid raps. So what I ended up doing is that I ended up actually doing a Rapmatic show where we did a 20-minute show. We recorded 2 songs and actually won like first place in film festivals. Because when you make things relevant, that's when people learn. So, and Raheem, this is what you were talking about as well. When we talk about those groups, when dads are able to talk to each other and they're able to have those conversations with each other and it's relevant to them, because a lot of times when we talk about policies, it's not relevant to them. And a lot of stuff that's going on, how do we make this stuff relevant where men can really talk about what's really happening with them? Because if you're not able to get in and have that and make them feel valued, you're not going to be able to have that, deep conversation. So I'm going to ask. Go ahead,
No, no, go
Frank.
ahead. I'm sorry. No, I'm like you both brought up yeah, hit it like on the nail on the head, because many of our guys have so much untapped like creative potential. Like and you know, when a gentleman comes in, you know, we do a development plan, and you know, what do you want to do? You know, what are some things you're interested in? And they usually go to you know, construction or something around those lines. And I'm like, what do you really want to do? And you know, you see like the majority of the guys are just have these hidden talents that they had to suppress because, you know, the public school system didn't, you know, encourage them to go on with it, and didn't do what you did, Derek, which is just incredible. I'm sure you had bars and you counting, and I mean, that's phenomenal. And I think that's really missing, and that's why a lot of our guys didn't finish you know, high school. It just didn't interest them. It didn't, you know, they wanted to do something else, but they were forced to, like, you know, choose something else, choose another field. That's not going to get you anywhere. But in reality, some of the guys are coming to college now and want to enroll into audio engineering class and things like that, and become producers and you know, the digital arts and website design and all these type of things. You know, it's there, and they just,
Well,
you know, then
that's what I think we need to bring to some of these discussions, because the reality is the reality. Most of everything we talk about with these groups, we've been researching for 40, 50 years almost. We got all the research on any aspect of Black, Latino male functioning. Somebody done did a research paper and made a whole bunch of money on it. But the reality is that we need things to engage them, that empower them and get and infuse in them a can-do type piece. So let's say through some of the projects I run on campus, you know, relate to science and technology. So if as a partner, you know, I would come to you, Raheem, and say, well, hey man, you know, let's say when the zombies go away and the pandemic is done, yeah man, why don't you bring some of your fathers up with some of their kids on this Saturday, and we're going to do a day where my kids who are 14, 15, 16 will teach your dads and their children how to fly a drone, because we got a drone program.
let's do it.
You know what I'm saying? So those are the kind of projects that we have. You know, we have a digital lab because we do our comic book stuff. So we can bring them up and they can actually kind of engage. I just wrote a grant for another brother, a small grant with the young men's initiative. And, you know, we need to talk about it because we're supposed to, with that grant, these guys are supposed to be working with young men, boys, and why not dads, around using comic books and literature and literacy and art. You know, so what I'm saying, what I would like to bring to the discussion about dads is that we need to also partner activities so that the dads and the young people, and if the dads just get the skill themselves and then turnkey with their kids, is engagement is everything. I remember when I was doing the rites of passage activities and we would go camping, I would call my crew, you know, all the brothers I hang out with, yo man, I'm taking these kids camping, I need you. So that cats would line up to go. And some of the brothers who are doing it are phenomenal cats still in the city, like Larry Brown, who runs Center Shot Archery. Larry and I and Alfonso Wyatt go way back. You know, Larry is a brother who just loved archery, and he turned it into, now he's training dads and parents and their kids all over the city, Black kids and archers. And he just produced the first national champion who's a Black kid out of Queens. We can do these kinds of things. Jeff, my man Jeff, was into something, into neuro-linguistic programming with Tony Robbins. He turned that into a tool now that he's working in community with, specifically, you can do it with dads and with kids dealing with the socio-emotional contexts. So what I would like to be a part of within the dads movement is, I said, let's link, you know, these types of activities and programs. These campuses are going to waste. Well, they're going to waste now for sure. But the real deal is they were going to waste before this, before the pandemic. We don't use those campuses enough in terms of activities and programs with young people, and forcing those campuses to use their resources, specifically like the digital arts, the film department, these activities that, you can say, well, hey, so-and-so head of the film department, I want to bring in a couple of weeks, 8 dads and their kids, and we want you to show or give them how the film thing works so that they can work on something with their kids. And there's another project we have that I like to talk about, and that is, I have a sister that I work with, Lecture Weston. She has a project called Click Flicks, where she's teaching kids and could also teach dads how to use their cell phones as for filmmaking, edit and everything right in your phone. Don't need a studio, do it all in your phone. I mean, and the kids can do it with dad, or dad can learn how to do it and then turn it on to the kids.
So Gene, so what you're talking about is really, that is phenomenal. So how do we create this network of resources? Because even within CUNY, creating this hub where people know like where to go to get this information. So how do we circulate that information even throughout CUNY?
Yeah, well, I think again, one of the things we could start out with is micro projects, like we just mentioned. Your guys, his guys, whoever else got some guys. Let's set up some small activities to see how people test run it, see if they're interested. We can do that. There's some things we can, like say soundtrack. Your guys would love soundtrack. Why?
Yes.
Because they think that they already think that they P. Diddy, which is cool. But they can also do this at home on the computer with their kid, or bring their kid into an environment where they can do it. So I would definitely, offer this engagement. Be willing to, more than happy to sit down and have a discussion about actually planning out some initiatives.
We'd love it.
I'm down. It's fun to me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
I'm with it.
I see you. That's music in the back of you, Raheem.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Even that.
Yeah.
You can debate and argue over anything. We know Black people love to argue. So sometimes when I talk to kids, about the music, and they hear a song, and you hear the melody or a beat pattern, and they telling you this is a new song. You're like, son, that made that record in 1973. Blah blah. Oh no, cool. But what I try to do with kids, and we can do this with young men in your group, is actually have the debate not over whose music is the best or worst, but over the production in the songs. What are we listening for? Melody, all the lyrical content, all these kinds of things. I just feel that with all the issues confronting young men and young fathers specifically, we need to open up some sunshine too. And some of that sunshine could be inspirational in terms of making choices and deciding on a path of an activity or a potential career that they may be interested in. I think the last thing, in that whole kind of conversation I would talk about is, at some point we got to talk about the economics of it.
Yeah.
And the challenges and how some of these things may lead to greater economics.
Someone has a question, right? And I think all the thing you're talking about, when we talk about our young people, they are very involved in the social media aspect. When you talk about even our millennials, that's where they live. And, sometimes I say with us, the older generation, we are almost like the immigrants, where we are constantly going to our children. And this is the first time in history where we are really the immigrants, where we have to go to our children to say, how do you do that?
That's right.
And with that comes a lot of power, and that's why sometimes with our children, they feel as though they have this power because, they have a lot of the information because technology sort of runs everything. So someone has a question. What do you think of utilizing social media apps like Clubhouse to get this generation engaged in fatherhood or engaged in education or just engaged overall? So I'll start with you, Raheem.
Yeah, that's a great. I'm actually trying to get in the Clubhouse now. Like I'm not even familiar with. I know what it is, but I think that's an excellent idea. I think we're going to have to use these apps. Uh, it, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity that came out of this pandemic. I hate to say it in that way. I don't mean it like it's a great thing. It's definitely horrible. But I think there were some things that we were able to reach certain fathers that we may not have reached in person, to be quite honest about it, in some cases. Of course, we prefer the in person. And some of that was because we are able to, conduct our work virtually, using technology. I think applications like Clubhouse and others, that's essential. I mean, I think we have to use these moving forward. That's what's gonna. This is going to be the wave for the foreseeable future. Um, of course, there's going to be. It has to be some type of a combination of in-person and virtual environments. But we have to figure out how to navigate those in a way that's uh, still allowing for fathers to be transparent. How do we have safety within these online environments and these applications? We have to create that. Um, but I think if we don't really embrace and learn, learn from our kids, Derek. Like, I mean, we have to learn and really embrace these because our guys, our families, our fathers, they're on these things, and I don't see it going away anytime soon. It's just going to be another application is going to come out next year. That's the new thing that everybody is on. And if we're not on them, we're not going to be able to connect. And I mean, I think we have no choice in this matter.
Yeah, I think one of the projects that we do every year is we work with Amadou Diallo's mother, Kadiatu Diallo and the Amadou Diallo Foundation. And I think, again, that's another resource that she would love to talk to your guys, and what we do with that project is, and our Male Empowerment Network at BCC is actively involved in it, is we do something we call the Amadou Diallo Arts and Sci-Tech Youth Commemoration. All that basically to say that every year we engage young people and their parents, where possible, around the technologies of today and the art of today, how they infuse each other. So last year, I think the theme was Invasion of the Geeks, which we basically tell the kids that it's cool to be a geek. I mean, it's real cool. But this year with the online, we didn't know what to do. So we came up with the idea that what we decided was that based on the Capitol assault on January 6th, we put together panels where young people and parents, whoever got involved, actually talked about the impact that social media and those digital technologies had on what actually happened in DC. And I think with our young folks, our young brothers, they see this stuff too. They have opinions about it. And they're also working the technology, because if you got 18 to 30-year-olds, you have different skill levels and different appreciations for how the technology rolls. And that discussion and that debate and that kind of trying to figure it out together, I think is very healthy, because, if social media, we saw what happened when the brothers and sisters did a demonstration over the summer. Every SWAT agency in the country got a free invitation. But we also saw what happened. So we use that as a tool to talk about, well, how did Facebook play into that? How did Twitter play into that? How did somebody be so goddamn dumb that they go into the Capitol building with a cell phone, taking a selfie of themselves, committing a federal crime? What type of super institutional racism are you on that you think that this is okay? But we had the kids and we had professionals debate it and discuss it and look at it and look at how that technology, that is their technology, because that's why we did it, is their technology played into it. And some of the things that the kids said, which would be similar to some of your young dads, was phenomenal. And they got to break down the technology and break down the TikTok and all this other kind of stuff. And the way, hey, I only picked up 30% of what they were talking about.
Right. I mean, like we were talking about tools earlier. These are tools, you know. It can be used as weapons for some, but you know, this can be used as tools. You know, I'm pretty sure in the future they're going to be like interviews that are going to be conducted on, like, you know, some type of live YouTube or something like that. Probably going on right now. Perfectly
I got
honest.
another sister who has a workshop where she teaches how to become a podcaster. Take the dads, have the dads. You know, these young men are searching, I think, for something. I mean, of course, they got all kind of social, emotional, family issues wrapping around it at the same time. But I think we can find avenues that I think will capture their imagination. And through those avenues, we talk one about the particular skill set that they may develop or the tool, but we also talk about how these tools or these may be helpful in terms of your communication and your engagement with your child, and in some cases, even with, if you're in a situation with the mom.
Right. The fathers want to be heard, you know,
Right.
and whether it's artistically
Right.
through social media or whatever, like they want to be heard, like they want their voices to be recognized and appreciated, which goes into, you know, our original conversation about fathers not being at the forefront in media or whatever. Like we have to, you know, our guys can be in control of their own, define who they are, and using these different platforms and different means. I think that's incredible.
So my question, when it comes to, when we look at a lot of the fatherhood programs and we look at where we are right now in regards to technology, even with a lot of times we're training fathers for jobs that are not there, or jobs where we have a lot of fathers who are working but part of the working poor. So what should we do in regards to preparing our dads really to compete in today's society, where it's no longer just, you know, a lot of the basics low level jobs are not there. And even when we look at a lot of our fathers, when we talk about the disparity that's happening in our communities, a lot of our dads are working at essential jobs with a low paying. And then a lot of them are also behind in child support because they don't make enough money to really move their family out of poverty. And a lot of them are living in poverty. So what do we do for fathers? And what advice can we give fathers to actually build generational wealth?
Oh, you go, Gene. I'm sorry.
Hmm?
If you want to go, that's fine.
Oh yeah, sure, I got you. Well, I think this is where we go into that gray zone that nobody really wants to talk about. And that is the impact of those policies that Derek brought up from the beginning, and how those policies have played out on the lives of young Black and Latino men for generations, in terms of have hindered them and created barriers towards economic wealth and real skill development. We're in an economy now that is strictly service-based. So it's not like you can get a job at the factory no more, like my dad did, or other dads back in that time. You can work at the factory for 30 years. You don't make a lot of money, but it's consistent. You're able to be there and take care of your children and go home and all that kind of stuff. Now, everything is temporal. Everything is a service job that's not going to last very long. So I think in relationship to these particular directions, we as a community of people need to begin to apply the same level of pressure and the same level of protest as we did around other things that we're impacted by. We got everybody out for the social justice and police killing demonstrations. But we don't make the link between police justice and lack of viable economic opportunity and careers for people, specifically men, in those communities. So we keep talking about what the police are doing, but we refuse to have a conversation about what the economic system and the structure is doing that strangles young men and puts them at the mercy of being in environments and being in situations where they compromise themselves. So for me, I think we need to begin to have as active and as vocal activities and demonstrations and whatnot that talk about real economic development, and that economic development could take the place of course, trade and vocational programs, of course, educational programs. But we need electricians, we need plumbers, we need those kind of brothers who are not getting. There's no place in the hood to get that training anymore. I lived on Staten Island for a long time, and occasionally I would ride what I call the 5:30 boat in the morning. That was the workers' boat. Who's on that boat? All the guys from Staten Island who had union jobs and union jackets and helmets on and big old lunch pails and all this. I say that because those are the jobs that them young men are not highly educated. They're making $35, $40 an hour, $25 an hour, standing up holding the flag or helping Uncle Bob put up a sheetrock in a building. We're not getting that. So part of our movement has to be to shift it, and as much discussion as we're having about the police, we should have about the failure of the economy to provide these types of long-term sustainable employment. What makes a dad a great dad? When he knows that he can provide for his family. That's what will keep him in the house. That's what will keep him in communication with his children, is when he is shamed and when he is put out, and marginalized and given jobs that are go nowhere, that he begin to lose traction and begin to lose his grip.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly, Gene. I mean, we have to create pathways to post-secondary education. I think that's the key. I think there's an opportunity there to, perhaps create, maybe family academies on each community college campus, to really serve the whole family. Of course, have, a fatherhood, component and something specifically speaking to fathers. But you're right, like fathers want to provide. Like I haven't met a father that doesn't want to put food on the table. I'm sorry. Like I just haven't. I don't know. There may be some misconceptions in the world that there's some guys that just, no, I've never met, all my years, I've never met that guy. This fathers want to provide, to the point where, when they're in the program at times, they feel guilty. They're like, man, I could be out there getting it. I'm here learning math, and it's like, is this a long-term plan? Like what,
Guilt turns to depression.
Absolutely, they're connected.
Depression turns to desperation. Desperation turns to bad decision making. You don't create choices. So again, I'm not living on Staten Island. You take a young white kid, good kid, who basically just another kid on the block. He will hang out with black kids, Latino kids, everybody. They get along very well. But he gets to be 19. His dad will sit him down and say, look, start next week, you're going downtown with your Uncle Joey. You're going to work on the site. And the kid be like grumble about it. But he go down to the site, they give him a flag, and he's just standing out there doing this all day long, making a little bit of money. In 3 months, though, they put him into a guild training. Whether he's going to do electrical, he's going to do sheetrock, he's going to do something. In the 6 months, he now is a member. He's thinking about buying his car. But what does he get more important than the money? He get the mentoring of all those men on that work site. They teach you how to date. They teach you how to pick a wife. They teach you how to pick a car. They teach you not to buy $300 sneakers because you can use that money for something else. That's what our young men need.
So, Gene, I have a question from our audience. So this is for both of you guys. So the question is, a lot of us have lost our fathers and lack a male role model. How would you advise someone about finding a role model in fatherhood?
That's a good one, but I don't think it's
great question.
As complicated as sometimes we try to make it, because a lot of us grew up with in environments where we didn't necessarily have our dad in the house, but oftentimes we had community dads. And you know, I always tell brothers, like, look, man, you know, you're a single dude, your guy may not even have kids, you live in a building, in that building there are at least 3 kids on first floor, second floor, seventh floor that you can spend your time with once a week, twice a week to do something. But we have to bring that back within our own sense of community that is worth it. You know, quick, real fast story. When I was a kid, you know, a lot of us in the neighborhood had that challenge. But I remember this one gentleman who came to town, and I grew up in a small community, Mr. T. And Mr. T, well, he was an educator, but he worked in the youth program, you know, that whole thing. And he was never out. Mr. T eventually fell in love with this woman who was divorced and had 3 kids. Mr. T, you know, and the smallest kid, you know, was about maybe 7 or 8, 6. He took that family, and one of the kids was my age, and we were about ready to hit the streets by then. And my friend got into the street, but Mr. T was able to take the family, and eventually they moved out and they moved to another community. But he raised that 3rd child as his child. And he gave him all those things that we talk about. And I think that a lot of us are in a position where we can maybe not do at that level, but we can do more with our time. Because what is there to do? You know, we got a lot of guys, 32, 33 years old, ain't married, ain't looking about getting married. They spend their weekends at the bar, at the club. I'm saying we need to apply some pressure on ourselves as a community, because it's not the challenge here is not the issue of just the parent. These are community challenges. And as community members and as community leaders, we have to step up. I mean, I've been mentoring, you know, young men in my community for years. I took one kid when he was 9. Now he's like 24. I done been through everything with this kid. You know, lockup, family issues, wonderful successes in different areas. But that's part of what this is about. It's all that, you know, that's what this is about. This is not a fashionable thing.
Right.
This is a struggle.
Agree. Yeah. I think we have a responsibility as men to be mentors to the next generation. I was fortunate enough, you know, my father was in my life, but my parents separated, and you know, he continued to live in Detroit, and you know, I didn't realize what like co-parenting was until the fatherhood movement. I didn't realize that's what I grew up in, a co-parenting situation. But he was always there, like emotionally.
Yeah, right. My dad was the same way.
And you know, like when I didn't have, you know, when I needed more, like a, you know, a presence, you know, I shout out to my cousins who took me under their wing and put me on game, and some of the elders out in the community, some of the brothers I grew up with, just, you know, kind of, you know, point me in the right direction. Like, no, don't go there. You know, think about going that way. And I think, you know, I don't know. I think it came. I don't know if it came naturally, but I feel like we have a responsibility to continue that and paying it forward. And you know, I was always like seeking, you know, like, hey, you know what, asking questions, and you know,
our young fathers who are having these struggles, they need the older fathers,
right?
You know, to help and to guide and to discourse and dialogue with. We've been too quick for now almost a couple of generations, to vilify and to diminish young men who are struggling and are not getting it the way that, quote unquote, we think they should get it. You know, but the reality is we play this game with ourselves, and let's say my generation, you know, will look at, you know, young guys and say, man, look at that kid over there, them pants and then the way he carrying himself. Man, when I was like, we didn't do that back then. Yes, we did. Shit, we had heroin.
Right.
You know, we had heroin. You know, I buried, you know, went to the funerals of 50 heterosexual men who in my community, who from the mid 70s to when the HIV/AIDS thing hit, all died. I didn't know a homosexual person with AIDS until well into the pandemic. I knew heterosexual men who were out there and they got lost. So we can't make believe that it's just this generation.
And then my gen was crack.
Right. So
right.
Back to Derek's question, we all can assume more accountability as a community. Right. Even if you're our college students who are listening, our 19, 20, 22-year-old young men, there's a kid in your building. There's a kid on your block who would love to spend time with you once or twice a week, just chilling out, talking, going getting the ice cream, throwing a ball. It's that simple. That's what saved me. My dad, like your dad, was around, but I had a lot of community elders who were there for me.
And to your point, like one of the things for me as well, when I was growing up, I was in a situation where my mother died when I was 10. And my father was not a part of my life at all. So I grew up not really having both parents. And I was the youngest of four brothers and three sisters. So, but I made a promise to myself that although I didn't have a father, that I'll always be there for my children. And that's why I created Real Dads Network. Because Real Dads Network was that space where men could go to look and have conversation with other men when we talk about those role models. So we talk about having honest conversation, and also a place where men could be vulnerable. So one of the things that we've been doing during this pandemic is that we've been meeting for 11 months straight every Thursday. We meet on Zoom, and we have men from across the country who are part of this conversation, just being vulnerable and sharing their stories about fatherhood, about parenting, about what's going on with their relationships, what's going on with their health. So, and I think for a lot of times for us, it's a matter of putting ourselves in those spaces. And this is what you guys talked about earlier in regards to, the school, when the students were there, being able to be in that safe space and have those conversations with each other, and with men having real conversations with men. So that's one of the things we do at the Real Dads Club. We do it every Thursday. So I'm going to throw a question out. This will be, I guess, one of our last questions. What is the thing that you would advise fathers to do during this pandemic to uplift their families? So we'll go to Gene, whoever wants to take it.
I think the most important thing that, one of the most important things that specifically even during this pandemic is that we learn how to enjoy and nurture and embrace our children. And because everybody's afraid and kids are under a lot of stress themselves, from school, from the online learning environment, to missing their friends, to dealing with isolationism and some levels of stress and depression. I think we all need a hug, for sure. But I think that, there are things in our midst that we can do phenomenally, that don't cost a lot, but really require our complete presence. And sometimes, or too often, we're too scattered in terms of where we're putting our energies and our efforts and our focus. And when it comes down to your children, they, believe me, they need, require, and oftentimes demand, and they know when you don't give it. I was a single parent with my daughter. Every Saturday, everybody knew from 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the evening, me and my daughter hitting 2 or 3 dance classes. That's what we did every Saturday. And people like, yo, bro, it was Saturday, we going down. No, can't do that, man. Me and my daughter, we doing this and this. And I made that priority, and one day, I remember when she broke up with me. Your daughter break up with you sooner or later. And I'm like,
don't say that.
Dad, they got the new Harry Potter coming out. Oh, girl, we going down to see that on Friday. Dad, I can't go to movies with you on Friday. All the kids are there. But it was worth it. It was a heartache worth having, because we had this tremendous run of communication. And of course, we continue to do stuff. But they would let you know, like, okay, Dad, you got to let go a little bit. But she mastered her dancing. But we mastered the communication of being a dad and a daughter. Then she broke my heart.
I think we all have daughters too. I think we all have
That's
daughters.
right. So right here, be right. Get ready. Get ready.
Yeah. I know. No, wait a minute. It's so important. And I agree with everything what Gene said. And I add, just checking in is extremely important. Even and I know, some brothers aren't, with the mother of their child. Even checking in on the mother, find out what's going on. Are you good? We had an opportunity this last during the pandemic to receive a lot of items from the Good Plus Foundation, who've been really supportive of, we have a great partnership with them. They've been able to, provide us with a whole lot of great items, from strollers on. And, guys are finding that, during this time, they're able to have a little bit more community. Hey, what do you need? And Good Plus Foundation can actually provide and assist with these things. A lot, and this is a tough situation, checking on your kids. We my daughter has been struggling with online learning. She's doing okay, but this is not regular. So checking in, I think, is incredibly important on the people that are just in your life, and if they have anything to do with your child. Definitely, one thing I recommend also with fathers, if you're able to, uh, do your best to be involved with the school situation. And children in school, talk to the teachers, have a conversation, find out how the child is doing. You know, Hopefully in the future, that'll be even expanded even more, where fathers can be involved in all the conversations revolving around the child's education. It's extremely important. You learn so much, but it's extremely important now and moving forward.
So thanks, Ray. I'm going to also just add to that in regards to one of the advice that I would give to dads as well. And I think everything you guys shared was just phenomenal and on point. And I'm just going to add to it as well. What I would say to dads, which is going to sound funny when you first hear me say it, be selfish. Because what happens too many times, we take care of everybody else, but we don't take care of ourselves. So right now we're dealing with a lot of stress. We're dealing with a lot of anxiety, but we're trying to be strong for everybody else, but we're not taking care of ourselves. Some of us, all this time all the stuff that we're going through, a lot of us need therapy, and it's okay to go to therapy because you're going to therapy to strengthen yourself, because you want to be the best you that you can be so you can uplift your family. So if you're not taking care of yourself, then you are not going to be able to uplift your family. So my advice to men is to be selfish, and you're being selfish because you're really being selfish to take care of everybody else. But make sure you're selfish so you can take care of your family, because your family needs you more now than at any other time. So you have to make sure you have the strength to uplift them. Because if you don't take care of you, you're not uplifting anybody.
What a great note to kind of close out. But I first want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out and just sharing your knowledge, sharing your insight. As I was getting ready to come on, we had a question come in on our chat, and I think that last bit was supposed to be the end, but it's such a great question that I want to kind of facilitate this for you guys. And we can start with Derek. The question is, what do you think about fatherhood being intergenerational? I am a 47-year-old father of 3, 2 boys and a girl. Yet I've fathered men older than me as well as younger. Should age matter?
In regards to age doesn't matter, because when you are a father, you're always a work in progress. And you're always learning. So part of being a father is that you want to be the best that you can be for your family. So whoever can bring you that information that's going to help you grow, you have to be open and receptive.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Derek. You never can learn too much about being a dad. This is you're going to learn for the rest of your life. I'm already preparing myself mentally for my daughter dissing me for doing something else. But that's knowledge. I'm taking that. I'm taking that. I'm taking that from Gene and Derek, preparing me for that next step. And then hopefully I can empower that wisdom to the next generation. And no, this intergenerational change requires intergenerational parenting. So that's a great point. I love that.
Yeah, I just think that one of the sins that we make as adults, specifically as parents, is we forget what it was like to be children. And then we get into the dad or the parent mode, and everything is from that lens. And we forget what it was like to grow and to learn things and to and whatnot. But I believe that, you know, we have numerous communicate with them because, you know, they're not the same person they were 12 years ago. And sometimes we come off with our children as if they're supposed to be the same person they were when they were young. And I just think that there's a tremendous opportunities for us to continually be on that trajectory of learning about ourselves as people, as human, and as men, and learning how to better serve the people that we love.
Thank you so much for that, gentlemen. Again, thank you for the time. I want to let everyone know who's out there in the YouTube sphere, this video will live on the CUNY BMI YouTube page. So youtube.com/CUNY BMI. Please make sure you follow us on all social media platforms, as you see at CUNY BMI, to hear about more events. Our further series next month will be April 8th. And we'll be talking about the role of mentorship, which is very close to what we're speaking about today. And so, again, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
brothers.
you.
And man,
Thank you.
love you guys,
Thank
man.
you.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Raheem. Of course, thank you, Jorge.
Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Derek. Jorge.
Y'all